Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Alessandra Charlesworth, a marriage and family therapy professional, leadership consultant, and host of the Unlearning Studio. For over 12 years, Alessandra has helped individuals, families, and organizations recognize the patterns that keep them stuck and replace them with healthier ways of thinking, communicating, and leading. A unique background in business development, HR strategy, and family therapy has shown her that whether it's at work, or at home, the same human principles, which is emotional regulation, curiosity, healthy boundaries, and psychological safety, are the foundation of thriving relationships. Alessandra, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much, Sekani. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
All right. So first of all, I want you to take us back, right, to your 20s. So I would like to ask, who were you then? I mean, what kind of person were you then? And what dreams or ambitions were driving you then?
That's such a great question, and that feels like a long time ago. That was over 10 years ago. And when I think back of who I was when I was 20 years old or in my 20s, I see a girl who had a lot of big ambitions. And I think on the outside seemed very confident and very competent. But on the inside, I think there was a really big disconnect. In my 20s, I felt a really strong desire to matter, to belong to something. When I look back at how hard I worked, I was a little bit of a workaholic. I really identified that I worked so hard because I was trying to prove that I belonged, that I could do it. In my 20s, I worked in the business development area, and so there was a lot of older men there. And so naturally, being a woman, you didn't necessarily, older men didn't necessarily think you were smart or competent. My hair was too curly, too wild. I smiled too much. I was too young. And so I was constantly trying to prove myself. And then what I learned from that is that there's no reason that we need to prove anything to other people or to ourselves. A lot of times, the greatest things happen when we start to accept ourselves for who we are and can move from a place of peace rather than constant judgment and feeling like we have to run to prove that we're worthy of something.
And funny enough, that is like those are the major things I feel like a lot of people in their 20s are currently, battling, right? Trying to fit in and, a whole lot, right? So, should I say, was there a defining moment when you realized that understanding people, not just businesses, was what you wanted to, dedicate your life to?
I've always had a really big affinity for people. I love people. I think they're fascinating.
Mm,
What really
mm,
helped me is one day after work, I was walking and I almost got hit by a car. And
mm,
I realized that if I were to die right then and there, I wouldn't have done everything that I wanted to do. And so I
mm,
challenged myself. I had accepted to switch from a program for university that was on campus in the States to an online program. And I decided that I wanted to go and seize that opportunity to go on the on campus in the States to do that program instead with psychology. And it really helped me to be able to leave everything behind. I left my boyfriend who I was with for 2 years. I
mm,
left places that I volunteered at, and I was able to still do my job remotely because I was going to be gone only 6 months at a time. But through that program, I learned that people are fascinating and there's always reasons why we do things or why we don't do things. And a lot of the
mm,
times it starts with our childhood. We either learn behaviors that help us to survive that are adaptive at the time. So If someone learns that they're in a home where they're not safe and they have to lie so they don't get hurt or in trouble, they're going to become really good at lying and hiding the truth. If they learn
Mm,
that if they get hurt, their parents get angry. So if they trip and they fall, they say ow and their parents get mad at them instead of saying,
mm,
"Oh, my sweet baby, like, are you okay? What happened?" Instead of
mm,
soothing them, they're going to learn to be strong and to hide that they're in pain. So at the time, they're adaptive habits, but later on, they become maladaptive, where circumstances change, but your behavior doesn't. And so it's keeping you in a negative feedback loop. And it keeps you from being who you want to be and having the kind of relationships and daily experiences that you want to have.
mm. Wow. Oh, all right. Okay. So that's new. At least now I get to learn. I just learned that word actually. Oh, okay. And most of these things with parents do to kids, right? These kids grow up and some of them end up becoming people pleasers. Some of them, it just leads to a whole lot of uh should I say attributes, right? All because of, how we were trained in our childhood. So I remember a friend telling me that, um a child, like the training you give to a child is very, very important because that is what they'll grow up with, right? So it's very important to, um take care of your kids and make sure you train them properly, right? Most of us are
Mhm.
not even aware, but there are some habits they would, pick up when they are children that would actually follow them into adulthood. So it's really important, honestly.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
right. Hmm. So I want us to touch on leadership, relationships, and human behavior. Right. So, you've said that the same skill that strengthen marriage also strengthen workplace. Right. So what similarities have surprised you the most, basically?
I think the biggest one is conflict and needs being fulfilled. With
Mm,
needs being fulfilled, many of us have this desire to feel seen, to feel loved, and to feel valued. When we
mm,
are in romantic relationships or platonic friendships where we're not getting those needs met or we don't feel like we belong, that creates a lot of conflict. And the way that we address that conflict, we can get angry and we can yell, we can get withdrawn and we can get shut down. That has to do with our survival state. So our nervous system gets dysregulated. It perceives a threat. It says, oh
mm,
no, Jamie doesn't like me. Something is wrong. And you can either go into freeze, fight, flight, or fawn
yeah,
trauma response.
mm,
Because what happens when Jamie doesn't like you is it reminds you of another time in your childhood or in another relationship where you were rejected or you weren't valued or liked. So the problem becomes even more heightened. A lot of our
mm,
conflicts that keep repeating, we have to look at the emotion that we're feeling. Am I feeling
mm,
angry? Am I feeling unvalued? Am I feeling like nothing I do matters? Am I feeling like I don't belong? Where else did I feel that? And
mm,
that's why our responses feel heightened and sometimes feel disproportionate to what is actually happening at hand. And now the same translates to the workplace. If your manager decides to praise John in a business meeting, but he doesn't praise you for the work that you did, it can leave you feeling like you don't belong or you're undervalued.
mm,
Or if your coworker says that you made a mistake on the report that you handed in, it can leave you feeling humiliated. Where else did you feel humiliated before? And why does that feel so strongly? Or if conflict was a big problem in your house and people either avoided it or just got angry and shouted, how are you how are you responding to conflict in the workplace? That's why some managers tend to favor not being proactive with conflict. They like to ignore it and sweep it under the rug because they haven't really learned how to navigate conflict confidently, and it just creates a big snowball of problems later on.
mm. Wow. Oof. All right. So, emotional regulation, boundaries, curiosity, and psychological safety. Like you've mentioned some of them. They are like they are central to our work, right? It's central to your work. So why do you believe these qualities are so often overlooked, right?
In the workplace, in relationships, or in friendships, or all of them?
All of them, actually. Mm.
I think in the workplace because we haven't before really associated psychological safety as very important. You know,
Mm.
for a very long time, it was very much the attitude of, I pay you, you come to work, you get a paycheck, be happy. And in the older generations, they were happy with that. Like that was fine because that was all they knew. We didn't have a lot of discussions around emotional intelligence or boundaries or needs. That was also the time where kids were seen and not heard, and
Mm.
marriages didn't have a lot of emotional intimacy, right? They just had segregated roles. Everybody had their part to play to build the family, and everyone just did their part and it worked. And you just went to work and you worked. And if you were a kid, you went to school and you were good and that worked. Nothing
Mm.
else was challenged. And so now that we're entering a more enlightened area, now a lot of HR work is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, making sure that
Mm.
people feel really good when they come into work because getting the paycheck is no longer enough. People want to feel good about the work they're doing, the company they're working with, and they want to feel good about themselves when they come into work. So there are different motivations now, and we're now learning how to understand other intrinsic values and motivations other than just the monetary aspect. And
Mm.
I think why we didn't have it in relationships or friendships before is just, again, we didn't really have the language for it. But now people are so much more enlightened. Now there's all this talk about boundaries and feeling safe and feeling like they belong to something and being more
Mm.
connected to their identities, which I think is wonderful.
Mm. Oof. Wow. All right. Okay. So yeah, you often talk about, let's say, identifying negative feedback loops, right? Could you
Hmm.
explain what those are and how can someone, begin recognizing them in their own life?
That's a great question. So, a
Yeah.
negative feedback loop is what role am I playing that leads another action to occur that leads to an outcome that I don't like.
Mm.
So, what this can look like is having a fight with your romantic partner, having a fight with your friend, or having conflict at work, or simply feeling unseen. So, let's say
Mm.
that I go to a party or a networking event and I leave and I feel pretty down because no one really talked to me. Like I could have
Mm.
stayed home. I feel like, what was the point of me going? That would be a negative
Mm.
feedback loop. Every time I go to a party or a networking event, I just feel like I wasn't even there. I was invisible. What was the point? So, how
Mm.
would I overcome that negative feedback loop? I would interrupt the pattern. So, first, I would
Mm.
analyze and assess what did I do to continue this negative feedback loop? I didn't really talk to anyone. I was feeling shy, which is very valid. We all have our times where we're feeling shy. I stuck to
Mm.
myself. I wasn't really trying to meet new people. I stayed at the table. I didn't walk around. How would we interrupt the pattern? We would say, okay, what can I do? What's the smallest step that I can take? I can say hi to one person. Or if you're
Mm.
feeling bold, I can say hi to 10 people. I can make a joke. I can walk around and listen in. So you find different ways that you can interrupt the pattern. Sometimes there'll be big, bold ways, or sometimes you'll just have to find what's the smallest step that I can take to interrupt the pattern. And that's completely valid too. And as we interrupt those patterns, we can add in behaviors that we like that will lead us to a more positive outcome. And as we're trying new things, even though they feel scary, we are able to build new neural pathways and then reinforce them through that repetition.
Mm. Wow. Oof. All right. So yeah, you've also mentioned that once people change their behavior, their entire system can begin to recalibrate. So, what does that transformation typically look like in real life?
That's a great question. So,
Mm.
if we're at a networking event or a party, or we're wanting to go on dates or we're at interviews and we've identified that there's something that we're doing that's contributing to that negative feedback loop. And then we've
Mm,
said, okay, this is how I can interrupt that pattern. Then we go and we make small changes. So
mm,
like I've mentioned, we can go and say hi to someone. We can rewrite our resume, revamp it so it's more competitive. We can learn how to come in more confidently into that interview with very powerful body language, straight posture, head held up, a big smile, intentionally walking and
mm,
shaking the hand, and having a small value proposition like, hi, my name is Joe. I love the color yellow. I love to laugh and I love what I do. I love to make sales with people and I love to work with founders and make them $1 million a year or more.
mm,
Then we work on the way that we can show up a little bit differently. And then, like I
mm,
mentioned earlier, what happens internally is as we're interrupting the pattern and we're doing new behaviors, our our brain is now telling us, because before our brain tells us, don't do that. Don't say hi to that person. Don't do this. You're going to come on too strong. They're not going to like you. No one's going to laugh at your joke. It's telling
mm,
you all the ways that you could get hurt. And you are teaching your brain, no, it's not going to kill me to do that. I can feel that awkwardness. I can feel that discomfort. I can feel that pain and still
mm,
survive. So you're strengthening your muscles and your brain and you're strengthening your confidence to be able to say, I can try new things and get different results than the ones I was getting. And over
mm,
time, all of that, all of those neural pathways, all of those steps that you've done to get your desired outcome, it becomes natural and normal for you because you've strengthened
mm,
and trained that muscle. And now you can experience different results more confidently.
mm. Wow. All right. So, Alessandra, I'd like to say I'm learning a whole lot, right? Starting with what you just said now. I think that is something I'm going to practice more often because, the whole idea or sometimes the thought of doing something new that you've not done before, it can be really overwhelming.
Yes.
Honestly, it gets too overwhelming. You don't even want to do it anymore. You just rather remain, in the state that you're familiar with, right? But at the end of the day, if you want change, right, in your life, if you want some form of change whatsoever, you need to actually do something different, right? And you need to be able to overcome that, should I say, anxiousness or anxiety, right? You need to
Hmm.
overcome it and just start small. Before you know it, like you said, it becomes a part of your routine, right? So, wow.
Yeah, and I just
Okay.
want to share like that's extremely valid. It is
Mm,
overwhelming. It's completely common and natural for people to feel so overwhelmed that they can't make the change. And that's
mm,
why sometimes there's going to be bold changes and sometimes it's just what's the smallest simple thing that I can do? Because there's always one small simple thing that you can do and with repetition and over time, you'll get enough
mm,
positive experiences with it that your body and your brain will then say, yes, I can do this and I'm good at doing this. And I can change my life and I can get my desired outcomes through this.
mm. Wow. Oh, all right. Thank you so much for that one, Alessandra. And yes, before I ask my final question, I would like to ask this. In today's like fast-paced world, many people react before they reflect, right? So how can we become more intentional in the way we communicate with others?
That's such a great question.
Mm,
I think this is extremely hard to do without practice. And even with practice, there are times that this is extremely hard to do. So
mm,
I just want to knock out a few of the barriers. And I just want to talk about this great acronym called HALT. If we are hungry, if we are horny, if we are angry,
mm,
if we are lonely, if we are tired, we will not
mm,
respond in the best ways. So anytime that we feel like we're coming across something and we recognize we're dysregulated, we're recognizing, hey, this actually hit a nerve for some reason. And there's always a valid reason. It often has to do with feeling an emotion that you felt in the past that has been hurtful or uncomfortable. And so
mm,
you're scared of that. But recognizing, hmm, is this the best time to respond right now? Or would it be better for me to sit with this and think instead about where this person could be coming from, what they could have really meant, and how I could respond for my best outcome? And if you're not in a place to do that, then go eat,
Mm,
go take a nap, drink some water, take some
mm,
breaths, do the things that are helpful for you, or go work out, do some jumps.
right.
Do the things that are helpful for you to regulate yourself so that you can be in a better place to respond. We don't need to respond and resolve conflict right away. It's okay to take some
Mm.
time. And movement is our best friend. It really does wonders at regulating our nervous system.
Oh, all right. Movement. Right. Okay. This is totally unrelatable, but I remembered, right? I came across a video on social media where a lady was crying. She came out from she broke up because of some traumatic experiences she had with a boyfriend, right?
Mm.
He was apparently cheating, and you know um how bad those consequences could be, right? She was
Mhm.
traumatized. And she came online and was crying that it's been 2 years and she has not moved on. The pain just comes and then overwhelms her, and she's unable to do anything. Meanwhile, the person who cheated on her is okay with their life, right? So I've asked a guest this before, right? Do you think one can ever get past a traumatic event? Like, do you think one can heal, like really fully heal from something, or do we just live with it? And what would be your response to that, actually?
That's such a great question, Sekani.
Mm,
I absolutely do believe that we can overcome traumatic experiences.
mm,
I believe in the atonement of Jesus Christ, and I believe that through that we can overcome it. And I also believe in psychology. And there are so many wonderful people that work with people who have gone through traumatic things to help them overcome that.
mm,
Typically, in overcoming something traumatic, something that's ruptured is our sense of self and our trust with ourselves and our self-worth and our identity. Referring to
mm,
the cheating example, sometimes people struggle with how did I not see it? Or did I see the signs and did I ignore it? And both of those questions lead to this loss of trust. And with
mm,
trauma, trauma typically comes with a sense of betrayal. Our identity has been violated. And a lot of people that have gone through trauma feel like, why couldn't I stop it? And they blame themselves. And I think that is one of the hardest components to heal. But I would encourage anyone who's overcoming trauma to know that they're someone who deserves to be loved and who deserves to be happy and deserves to feel peace. And we all have lapses in judgment. Some people are
mm,
really great at lying very convincingly, and just to be gentle and kind with themselves.
mm, mm. Oh, like you said, being gentle and kind with themselves. Right. Wow. Okay. So, yes, finally, Alessandra, for someone in their 20s, right, who wants to become a better leader, whether in their career, friendship, or should I say future family, right, what habits would you encourage them to start developing?
I think the most important one is to learn how to regulate yourself when
Mm,
everything's chaotic. When people bring you problems or when you're tired or hungry, just learning how to calm your nervous system so you can make the best decisions. That's just as a partner leader, as a parent leader, or as an organization leader, that's just really important. And then the second thing is know your people and really value them. People are willing to come to managers and leaders and tell them that they're struggling with something or that they don't like something if they feel that you really care about them and there's this accessibility and open door policy.
mm,
Otherwise, lots of problems will snowball. And the third thing would be deal with conflict head on and assess it at the root. A lot of times we
mm,
just deal with the tip of the iceberg. We're like, okay, let's put a band-aid on this and we'll table this until a month or 3 months from now. But then what happens in organizations is that things start to fester and it gets worse. And then you have a lot of people quitting or you're firing people, and turnover costs a lot of money. So those three things: learn how to regulate your nervous system, know your people, whether you're in a relationship, you're a parent and you have kids, or you're a manager. And then three, deal with conflict head on, resolve it at the root. I think those would be the most important things.
Okay. Like you said, learn how to regulate your nervous system, know
Mhm.
your people, and deal with conflict head on. Very important. Wow. All right. So, yes, thank you, Alessandra. This has been amazing, honestly. And, it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. I call it the rapid fire segment. You could either answer with a word or a phrase starting now. So, what is one word that describes your 20s?
That's such a great question. The first word that came to mind is lost. I don't know if I'll stick with that word, but I'll go with that one for today.
Okay, all right. So, what is one word that describes you now?
I think the first words that come to mind are peace and learning.
Mm. Peace and learning. All right. And what is one habit that strengthens every relationship?
That's a really good question. Taking time for yourself, taking time to still feel connected to who you are. A lot of
Mm,
times with the relationship, sometimes we feel like we have to get lost in the relationship and we start to lose the things that make us who we are. And so with that comes lower self-esteem, loss of sense of self, lower self-worth, and lower
mm,
attraction, lower sexiness as well, because you're no longer in your element doing the thing that attracted you to the other person or that attracted them to you in the first place. So staying with
mm.
who you are and making time for yourself and not getting lost in a relationship.
Wow. Wow. All right. Very important. Like you said, staying with who you are and not getting lost. Right. And finally, what is one word you hope people use to describe you? Right.
That's a good question. That's hard. Just one word. I don't know. Maybe happy.
Hmm. Wow. Oh, all right. Okay. So yes, thank you, Alessandra, for joining us today. And finally, before you go, where can listeners get to learn more about you and also connect with you?
I would love for listeners to listen to the Unlearning Studio or to go over to
Mm.
my link tree, Alessandra Charlesworth, and you can connect with me there if you want to work together.
The Unlearning Studio. And yes, as usual, I'll put the link in the show notes so it's easily accessible for listeners. And to my listeners, I would say thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone you think might need this and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Once again, thank you, Alessandra. Do you have a
Thank you.
beautiful day ahead of you?
Thank you so much, Sekani. It was such a wonderful chat. I really appreciate it so much.
All right. Well, thank you, Alessandra. And yes, take care.